So I guess being self-aware is important as a man in general, but especially when coming into vulnerable spaces.
Yeah.
I think being open and willing to input helps. Like as far as like being a listener, listening to what others might perceive of you, which I think goes to the self-awareness too. And also just ask questions. You know,
Mental Health Monday.
Mental Health Monday.
because out of that same respect, like there's an understanding that that's a weird move, that's out of character.
That's the value of trust.
For sure.
And you've built your brand on trust.
For sure.
And like, I'm surprised more terrifying things like that don't happen.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, with the world that we live in and how people move.
It got so crazy I tried to go to Catfish. I mean, is that called Catfish? The MTV show?
Yeah, that is.
I tried to reach out to them to see if they could figure out who the person was, but I couldn't get in contact with them.
Yeah.
'Cause I was confused.
What, Catfish?
Yeah. But Catfish,
That would have been awesome.
That would've
if they
been
would have helped you out, or at least somebody within their team been like, actually, we can, but let me see what I can do.
they only move forward with things that are already solved. Like if you already know who the person was, and the person agrees, then Catfish works.
It's always it boggles my mind when I hear the back end
Right,
of
that's
like
crazy,
how
right?
things actually work. Because then it's like there's a writer room that has to make this interesting.
For sure.
And not just the music.
For
like
sure.
there is a writer's room that has to make this interesting. What's the name of the folks that are protesting right now? What's it called? WAG? The writers that are protesting.
Oh, SAG.
SAG?
SAG.
Yeah, we stand with SAG.
Yeah, for sure.
Put that up.
For sure.
SAG, not even a question.
For sure.
Yeah, my homie, part of it, she been telling me about all this F stuff that was happening for a while, so I'm not even surprised.
But yeah, it speaks to the trust. It speaks to the level of respect that I think people have kept over time.
Do people make a safe space for you and all this work that you do? Because, like, you can't tell me that it's just you deep dive every day and no one's like, nah, come up for here, bro. Like,
do people make a safe space at the shoots? Maybe not as much.
but there are people that are concerned about you.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a community of us as photographers that are thoughtful, i.e. like a Owen or Dio, or just other people that I've met throughout this DC space.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I made the list.
Yeah, I think every time I see you, we have a long conversation every time I see you. Yeah, I think there are people that do care about that aspect of it. And there's clients here and there that go above and beyond to do that too.
Okay.
But I think for most people, we're a service that they enjoy.
Would you like to see more of that? The first half, not the service that they enjoy. Like, would that make a difference to the feel of your work? Because no one's questioning the work ethic. I think questioning work ethic at this point would be useless. But I do question the longevity of people's work, and if the environment was better, how much more could be accomplished.
Yeah, I think understanding that no matter how much you love our work, no matter how dope of a life it appears that we're living on social media, people are still human, and there are bad days, there are good days, there's mundane days, and just I think understanding that even though a photo shoot is about you, that person's life is not about you. And just I think being empathetic on a human level helps a lot.
Okay.
I think even if there's not like a go out of your way act to do it, I think being understanding of people's time, respectful of their mental space that they've given you to do this shoot or this service, I think is important.
What's a word of advice you would give to a young lady who's looking to do a shoot and it's probably going to be in a vulnerable space? Or do you consider all
Ask
shoots
questions.
a vulnerable space?
I think all photo shoots can be a vulnerable space, but there are ones that are especially vulnerable spaces. I think ask questions. I think the nature of what we do, depending on who the person is that you're shooting with, can come off as like there's a hierarchy to it. Like this is this great person, and you're this you could see yourself in that situation. Excuse me. That's a lower person on the totem pole on the social food chain. So I think asking questions and not being afraid to ask questions helps. I think a lot of these situations could be avoided. A lot of the situations, the sticky situations, the icky, creepy situations that we've heard could be avoided by more questions being asked. Why do you want me to take more shots? Why can't I bring a friend? Why can I only come at midnight? You know what I mean? Just, I think certain questions make it harder for somebody to be a creep.
That last question was a thing?
I remember when a few of these different whistleblowing situations came out where stories are unrolling and, you know, people could only shoot at midnight or after.
Crazy.
Yeah. Or like even to the shots part, like people are forcing people to drink and forcing people to smoke, and you know, like I think a lot of that is like a simple but why will let you know who that person is. Right? If you're trying to get me to take a bunch of shots and I say I'm good, but you keep forcing, and I'm like, but why? Their response has to be something that makes sense in my head for me to move forward, right? Otherwise, you've given me enough to be like, I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? So I think more questions is a very important one. I think same thing that I mentioned that I ask photographers. Where's this shoot going? What's the vision behind it? Because if they haven't thought of the vision, you've put it on them to, I hope, think about it now. And again, if you don't like that answer, that lets you know whether or not you need to move forward. And then like, where's this going as far as like, is this something anyone's ever going to see? That says a lot about something too, I think. If on the photographer side, if you don't want to put it out, it's either because it's bad and you know it's bad, or this isn't something you're actually pursuing. Which again says a lot. So I think just asking more questions.
Okay. Now, when it comes to men in vulnerable spaces, what do you think their concern should be when it comes to going into a photo shoot?
Definitely the same questions. I think, as a man,
Our concerns are different.
yeah.
Like for me, I don't get to D-size. I'm large
Yeah.
in every room that I go in. So I'm funny as a mechanism, not as a, this is who I'm always am. I get to be funny with my friends.
For sure.
With you guys, I get to be funny. That's enjoyable. But there's certain rooms where if I'm funny now, that takes away from them having to be uncomfortable when I decide to stop talking.
So by that, then I would say that's a hard one to say though, because that's what you just said is a very self-aware assessment. So I guess being self-aware is important as a man in general, but especially when coming into vulnerable spaces.
Yeah.
I think being open and willing to input helps. Like as far as like being a listener, listening to what others might perceive of you, which I think goes to the self-awareness too. And also just ask questions. You know, I think if you're in a situation that you deem to be uncomfortable, or that you might be perceiving to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and you're able to, hey, it's not my intention. Are you comfortable? Are you good? Checking on people, I think, is important too. Yeah, I think just I think a lot of all of this, I think, goes back to like communication and empathy. Like if you're able to communicate, I think it cuts down some of it, but also understanding that a person doesn't see something the way you see it, or might not see it the way you see it.
Yeah.
And talking through that, I think, helps a lot too.
Now, you've done shoots, you've traveled.
That's interesting. I don't know if I've
Thought about it from the male perspective?
yeah, I thought about it from the male perspective, or if I've worked. No, I lied. I have worked with a male that I could tell was uncomfortable. And
For him?
For him.
For you?
For him.
Okay.
First time really in front of a camera in that way. Didn't perceive himself to be in front of the camera type. Yeah, communication would help through that process.
Yeah. I think the work you're doing right now is necessary, but in like a completely different way.
Okay.
I'm big on implementation.
Okay.
Right? So in the work that I do with this, I get to give folks advice, and I get to do sit downs with you guys because like your stories are where the answers are, whether you see it or not. And when I get the answers, I get to highlight that. But for you, in terms of where things can be implemented, I thought, and I think it's important for people like you to have an interview because you technically do the work that everybody claims they do. We make a safe space, do you?
Yeah.
We're creating an experience that brings mental health and wellness. Are you sure about that?
Right.
Well, I've done all this work professionally, so hospitals are very cold places.
For sure.
Just naturally in the structure and the lighting. It's just the truth.
That's
Naturally
true.
in the structure and the lighting, hospitals are very cold places.
Extremely.
Down to the seats you sit on before getting put on a very uncomfortable
Sure.
bed that you have to stay on.
And it's usually actually cold in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've seen so much vibrance in your work. I sometimes wonder like, hey, can I reach out and ask you for advice on like, how can I make the thing that's a safe space a better space? Because making something a safe space isn't the complete version.
Right.
Safe space is just a moment.
Yeah.
So how do you either create something that could be more perpetual, or how do you create something that other people can recreate themselves and they no longer need somebody like me to tell them how to do it
Right.
or how to advise it? Now, most people would be like, oh, you could sell it. You can. But sometimes not everything needs a price. If you do enough work, the right people are going to reach out to you to pay you anyway.
For sure.
So I'd rather reach out to the folks who I think are doing what I'm doing, but in a different capacity, and talk to them and see what do I need to implement and keep in mind for what we do.
Yeah.
Especially as we move into making co-ed spaces for men and women to have discussions on what mental